What's up guys, AJ here. We here at fanatixfour are pretty darn excited to play Kingdom Hearts 3. You can bet that'll be a day one purchase for us, 50 years from now when it comes out. So I thought it'd be appropriate to shake things up a little. I'm going to attempt to explain Kingdom Hearts to you the best way I know how. Let's get started. Okay, so if you only played the PS2 iterations of this series as a kid, you understand that the story begins with this guy meeting these guys on his journey to find these guys and their journey to find this guy. If you played the handheld games as a kid, you understand that those kids that swore the console games were the only canonical games in the series to be released are all idiots and should be shunned and forced to watch bad, straight-to-DVD Disney sequels for the rest of all eternity. You also understand that the true beginning to this story begins with the Keyblade War. And if you haven't played any of the games, well, you probably don't even know what a Keyblade is. See, console-only kids? At least the PS2 taught you what a Keyblade is, sort of. I digress. While you console-only kids continue to suffer through Little Mermaid 3, let me explain to you and everybody else what you've missed. Keyblades are magical sword-ish weapons. Well, really they're not like swords at all. More like really blunt axes that a chosen few used to fight enemies. Heartless, Nobodies, Dream Eaters, and Unversed are all particularly susceptible to a Keyblade's power. Now I'm sure most of you are clued in on the Heartless and Nobodies, but I might as well explain those while I explain the other enemies to the losers over there watching Bambi 2. And you know, the poor unfortunate souls who have never experienced this series at all to begin with. But don't worry, it'll be fun for the vets too, you know, just in case you need a refresher. Okay, so Heartless are creatures that are created when the darkness in a person's heart overtakes them. There are two main kinds of Heartless, Pureblood and Emblem. Pureblood Heartless are Heartless that are naturally born from the darkness in people's hearts. Emblem Heartless were conceived by this guy. His name is Xehanort. Don't worry, I'll get to him. All I can give you now is that he's a really bad dude. We'll get into the specifics as to why and how later. Trust me, you'll thank me for easing you into learning about him. Emblem Heartless are essentially the same as Purebloods, only real difference is they're man-made. They're also differentiated by the emblems on their bodies. That's simple enough, right? Heartless can take several different forms that vary in strength, which depends on the depth of darkness inside of the person from which the Heartless spawned. But we'll come back to that later. Next up are Nobodies. When a person becomes a Heartless, they leave their body and soul behind, which in turn creates a Nobody. Unlike Heartless, a Nobody's strength is dependent on the strength of the person from which it spawns will. Again, save that in the folder somewhere in the front of your brain space. I'll come back to it soonish, I swear. Scout's honor. If you couldn't tell by now, that's going to be a trend in this video. It'll make sense later. As much sense as I can possibly make of the crazy convoluted chronicles of Kingdom Hearts, that is. Next up are Unversed. Unversed are way less common than Heartless or Nobodies. They were created in tandem with this guy, Vanitas. You know the drill, he'll be back. They're basically the precursor of the Heartless. Last and possibly least, if not pretty darn close to least, Dream Eaters. Dream Eaters are pretty much exactly what they sound like. Creatures that eat dreams. They conveniently only exist in the realm of sleep, which is only featured in Dream Drop Distance. So we most likely won't ever see them again. But I didn't want them to feel left out, so yeah, they exist. Or at least they did. Maybe they still will? Who knows? Okay, so anyway, back to the Keyblade. Jesus Christ, I almost forgot what I was talking. So yeah, the Keyblade against the enemies I mentioned is like grass to a swampert, super effective. But that's not its only ability. In fact, the Keyblade has a lot of abilities. I'm going to touch on all of them, just so I don't have to explain when they become relevant to the plot. Like everything else in this freaking video. One of the more important abilities to the plot is the inheritance requirement. Remember when I said not just anyone could wield a Keyblade? The inheritance requirement is a major reason for that. Current wielders can bestow the ability to wield their Keyblade with another individual with a strong enough heart to do so. Alongside that, current wielders can wield multiple Keyblades by acquiring the ability to wield another person's Keyblade on top of the one the dual wielder currently has. The Keyblade also has the ability to transform into different forms like gliders or gun blast laser thingies. Yeah, it transforms. That's basically the gist of it. It can give wielders some pretty sick armor. So at this point, I shouldn't have to tell you that the Keyblades can do some pretty magical stuff. Its ability to enhance the wielder's ability to use magic is something that's obvious, right? Lastly, in a shocking turn of events, Keyblades have the ability to unlock things. You know, like doors and whatnot. Not like your front door if you lock yourself out of the house or something. Although I guess you could totally decimate your door, but then you had to buy a new one, so yeah, don't do that. Just call a locksmith. Anyway, Keyblades open theoretical doors to different worlds. So that's what a Keyblade is in a nutshell, and that finally brings us back to what started this multi-layered novella-sized tangent, the Keyblade Ward. In the beginning, way before Sora, Riku, or any of that other nonsense, the world was whole and darkness was minimal. The people of that time created the first Keyblades in an attempt to obtain the Keyblade. That's right, the Keyblade, not a Keyblade, the Keyblade. If you're not ready for confusion and frustration by now, I don't know what to tell you. The most I can do is make this as painless as possible by streamlining the story, because as we all should know by now, Nomura wrote the basic outline, laid everything out on a dartboard, and decided what went where based on the order in which he hit each plot point on the board. That's actually fact. Anyway, they needed the Keyblade to control the world of Kingdom Hearts, which is called Kingdom Hearts. There's some unexpected simplicity for you. Okay, so all these people were fighting in a war for the right to have the Keyblade, which caused the world that was once full of light to be consumed by darkness when the Keyblade went all Shinju on us and shattered into multiple pieces. 13 pieces of pure darkness and 7 pieces of pure light. And the true Kingdom Hearts disappeared into the darkness. In true Disney fashion, the darkness was kept at bay by the light, but the worlds were separated in the process. And the story of the war was passed down for generations, with the Keyblade depicted simultaneously as a cause of darkness and destruction, and as a weapon to save the world. Ever heard of the saying that history repeats itself? That's where Xehanort comes in. He basically wants to cause World War II. Or Keyblade War 2? He wants another Keyblade War, guys. So he set out to recreate the Keyblade. That leads us to Birth by Sleep. What do you think? Any interesting tidbits that I might have missed? Leave them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to see the rest of this series explained. You don't want to miss the future entries in this series or our other new uploads every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, I'm done. See you next week.